Hi, gang. Welcome back. I am so excited for today's interview. We get to talk to a parent, a lovely parent in the school district. And today we're going to talk about what it is. You're going to hear firsthand about what it is like to be a mother of ND children in the neurodiverse community and in the school system. And we're just going to bring up a lot of thoughts, feelings, but then also some solutions that could be free to the school district. So I am really excited for today's interview, and I hope that you all find some value. Please do give me your feedback. So if you have any thoughts, if you have any aha moments, if you have any feedback that you'd like to say, hey, this would be good too, or this would be good too, or I'd like to talk to you as well, Teresa, then please do subscribe to this channel, like, comment, and share. If you want to get put on my schedule, that's easy. Just send me a message. I'll send you my schedule system. We'll get you on and we'll figure out how we can help you out too. So without further ado, this is Miss Amber.
Hello.
Can you tell me a little bit about what it is like for you as a mother with ND children, and what it has been like? Actually, let's just first start with what has it been like for you as a mom of ND kids? And since this runs in the family, are you yourself ND?
I am. But I did not know about my superpower until I was, well, I guess what it was clinically called until I was 29 years old. And I was formally diagnosed with ADD and OCD. So I just grew up with that. And I also am dyslexic, which at the time growing up in the 80s, it was kind of like they didn't really have any type of system. They were just like, work harder, try. And they gave me a sticky note with a piece, like a colored sticky note, and just go line by line and try to take the stuff. So like read things. So it wasn't quite a support system there. So as growing up and now being a parent with kids that are on the spectrum and have ADD and also dyslexia, it's kind of like I truly can relate and understand the frustrations that my kids are seeing in the school. And I try my hardest to be the change and be a voice in the school for those students and for the parents that, there are a lot of parents that want to do things, but they just don't have the means or the times, or even maybe afraid to cause ripples in the school. So I am that person that is the squeaky wheel for those people.
That's amazing. So really quick, before we get to the squeaky wheel, I want to kind of slow it down just a little bit. Can you tell me, knowing that you were dyslexic growing up, not knowing that you had ADHD and OCD, can you tell me maybe how you felt or some thoughts that you had in your experience growing up through school?
I felt stupid. I was like, I must be dumb but it was weird because I was also very, very intelligent and I pick things up and I really am good like visually. And also I can read upside down and backwards amazing. So when they have those little games, like I'm just like quick at that and I could pick apart things and find things really quickly. But when they tested me, I'll never forget when they did test me in school, they said, we don't know if she's really lazy or smart. Like, it's like some of the things that the quizzes and things like that, I would have to figure out. And I learned to adapt to find things in the room, to learn how to spell or, or in the paragraph to cheat the system and get by. I also, because of being ADHD, I'm able to hyper focus. So being like locking in, and when you're hyper focused, especially when it's on a good thing, it is amazing and it is a great tool because I was able to figure out strategies on my own, which was really difficult at the time, especially like in like school, because I asked my teachers, can I like record our lectures and things like that with a voice recorder, dating myself because we didn't have those kind of things, with a voice recorder. And I would try really hard to take notes the best way I could in class. Then I would go home, I would listen to the notes and rewrite them. And I would look up every word in a dictionary, trying to find out how to spell it correctly and what the actual meaning is. Then I would make note cards and continually quiz myself with the note cards to make sure I have the material properly. And if I honestly believe if I would have had support and some type of help within school, I probably could have been a brain surgeon. Like I was so dedicated, and just me, myself being, a 16-year-old kid trying to do these things and find ways and develop tools and just my coping mechanisms and strategies. I just think like if I would have had that support, I could have been so much more, but I don't regret it. Like, I feel like, wow, I came up with that on my own. And so that's why, I don't know, I guess I'm really passionate about for kids, like they're, like they who don't know where to go, or maybe they're not being hyper focused and they don't have that skill. So it's like looking for those opportunities for other people.
Yeah. So I just have to pause for a moment and talk about the brilliance of what you did and the resilience that you had and the very typical multi-dimension thinking of a neurodivergent individual, right? It's like, because our mind works the way that it does, it has so many gifts and so many untapped talents and so many talents that are tapped into, right? But then we also genuinely need support. And if given that support, our talents could be undeniably obtainable, right? And the amazing qualities that we have to persevere when things are tough for us. So thank you for sharing that for me. Can you tell me a little bit about your kids now? Because I've talked to you before, I know that you have 3 kids. Do you want to tell me a little bit about your kids, how you feel being a mom with neurodivergent kids? Like, what was it like when they were first getting diagnosed? What is it like now? What is it like between the 3 different kids? Because you have 3 different kiddos with different diagnoses, right?
Yes. It was quite a journey, because like when you're first a mom and you just kind of like you're learning everything and everything's new, and of course everybody bombards you with advice and what they think and they know. I have 3 children and 2 girls and a boy. My oldest was diagnosed when she was 6 years old, and my middle child has anxiety. But she has no diagnoses or anything like that. She's a pretty typical, I'm a middle child. She's a middle child. She's a typical middle child. We hold it down. And I have my youngest, my son, he is ADHD. He has dyslexia, and he's also on the spectrum. It was very different because they're different people. My oldest and my youngest have a 6-year age difference, and they're different people, and their diagnosis process was very different as well, and how they are in society and just in school and education is very different, even though they've come from the same household and everything, just because every kid's different. And that really, I guess I have to say, like, maybe my oldest we had a little bit of like a struggling period, trying to figure it out, because the process is like if it's some secret society, it is really hard to get the school to get on board. And I didn't realize that at all. And I've gotten very lucky with one teacher that helped kickstart all of this off, for my oldest. And then my youngest, he benefited because we knew the nuances and what you had to do to get these services, or like as much services we could do and support in the school. And I just feel like I always tell people, like, it's such a journey, and it's hard and it's frustrating and it's emotional, but like, don't ever feel like you're wrong or feel bad that you're advocating for your kid. And I feel like for my first child, I regret that I was worried about other people's feelings. And then I learned about like truly advocating, because it's like, well, I understand your feelings, but what about my child's feelings in this? So with my oldest, we kind of felt like something was off with her. She was healthy and everything like that. Everything was normal birth, all of that. Like everything was fine. We had no issues. It was just when we got to kindergarten, she seemed to have struggling like with her name. And it was like the letter M. She couldn't pronounce the letter M. And I brought this up to the teacher and she was like, oh, you're just being overprotective. You're a first time mom. And I was like, well, I just kind of think it's strange because like, I don't think this is a hard thing for her to learn. You know, she knows so many other things, but this is like hard for her. And they blew me off. And then finally I was like, hey, I really think there's something going on. And they said, well, we will not do anything. This particular school district was like, we won't do anything unless she's falling really far behind, and it has to be a year behind. And I was like, that makes no sense because she's a kindergartner. So you don't want her to learn how to read. She has to be like really, really far behind before you step in. So I thought that was weird. So my husband and I decided to move out of the school district, and we left the school district. And keep in mind, I have 3 children and I've been in 5 elementary schools, 2 different school districts, 1 middle school and 1 high school. So I've got to have a variety of different schools. And I'm also a parent that goes into the school. After everything with my oldest, I have also found the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I have infiltrated my school and I am in everything. I am there. I am going to be there in their face. They will see me. I'm there. And so I know what they're doing. I know how the school works because I'm volunteering. I'm there. I see what happens within the school. And I don't think a lot of parents are able to do that, or they're afraid. So I'm there and I'm seeing what happens day to day, and I know how things are run because I see it for myself. So it's a little harder when you're sitting in a meeting with them for them to call things out when I actually see it for myself. And you're like, I was there, I see these things. So that helps me a lot. But anyway, going forward, when we tried to call these meetings and whatnot, we they wouldn't do anything. So we moved school districts, and my daughter's first grade teacher, who is a lovely lady, I broke down to her and I was like, something's just not right. And I'll never forget standing there in the hallway. She grabs my hands and she looks at me and she said, so are you saying that you want to call an IEP meeting and have a review for your child? And it was almost like a wink, wink. And it was so weird that she had to do that. I was like, is that the magic word you have to say? Are those the things you have to say to get someone to do something for your child? And after that, the ball started to roll, and we got my daughter diagnosed, which was a pretty long process. But during that time, the school went ahead and started getting the ball rolling. And that's when you learn like how many days you're able to do something, and they don't count weekends, they don't count holidays, to get an IEP. Like they have so many like legalities and rules, which are really weird. What you just think you would just help kids, right? There isn't so many rules involved. It was just like, hey, your child needs to be reviewed. Also at the time, they were very strict about having every single person on the team there present in the meeting. Now that things have gone on like further, now it doesn't seem like every person has to be available at that time. It's like they can kind of phone in or send an email. So that's very different in the IEP process from 12 years ago, starting out, which is kind of helpful because it's hard to get like so many people all in one room at one time to agree for your child that you live with and raise, that to tell you what they think is best for your child. It's kind of weird, but that's how it started. And when we got to that
So
point,
wait, pause really
Mhm.
quick. I want to take a moment to ask you, going into your first IEP meeting, how did you feel and what were you thinking?
I was not prepared, and I was thinking, everybody's going to be on my side. Everybody wants to help my child. And I was wrong. It was not like that. It was super weird. Also, the principal at the time, unbeknownst to me and my husband, who's also an educator, we didn't know that there was angst between the teacher and the principal. So she actually made it problems and postpone things and services for my child because she was upset with my daughter's teacher because she said that she didn't bring enough schoolwork to show that her needs. And I was like, well, don't you think you would just trust what your teacher says? Like how much, she's in first grade, how much paperwork do you need, like, of her schoolwork? So because she didn't bring in actual, like, a big, folder of schoolwork, we had to postpone it longer. So that means, and at the time it was right when Christmas break was about to start. So she couldn't get any services until January when we could meet again. And that, it was super weird. And I remember leaving that room and I turned to my husband, I said, was that weird? Did they seem like they had something? And this was our first meeting, so I had no idea what to expect. And I said, it felt really awkward, like something else was going on in that meeting, but like we weren't involved in it, like we had nothing to. And my husband's like, well, maybe you're just reading into it, it was just a lot. And I remember crying in that meeting, and I didn't hold it together very well. And I was not mentally prepared or emotionally prepared for what was going on, because I felt like, wow, really personal about all this stuff, because it was your kid and it was the first time. And so later on, like several weeks later, I met with my daughter's teacher, and I just asked her, I said, I've never done this before. What was I reading into this wrong? And she was like, oh, you felt that too. Like you understand that the principal was like upset with me and doesn't like me. And I was like, yeah, I do. I did feel that. So I wasn't. And she's like, yeah, she doesn't really like me because I'm studying to be a principal as well. So she feels threatened. So it was very awkward. Needless to say, my daughter did finally get services because we're like, no, we can't postpone any longer. Like, it's already halfway through the school year. Let's get the ball going. That lady did go on to be a principal. She's an amazing person, great lady, an advocate. And I think she learned a lot and is advocating for students, especially students like my daughter. And I think the school district that has her is very lucky to have that particular new principal. So
yeah, but one of the things I'm really grateful for that. But another thing that I heard you say is a couple of things, right? To recap that, is that the staff in the school were bringing their own personal baggage, for lack of better words, to the meetings that was impacting your child. So they were putting their own personal needs above your child's needs. And that brought up some emotion and some confusion. Another thing that I heard that I felt like was said really fast, and I feel like this is important to say to the other parents out there, is you told the school that it was not okay to delay any longer, because this is something that happens so often. There is stuff that's told to parents as if it's a fact or as if it's not an option, right? Like putting a meeting on delay, and parents not knowing that they have the option to say, no, we can't delay this any longer, right? And having a say of when things happen.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
and I didn't know that at the time. And I was scared and I was worried, like, oh, we're new to the school, like, I don't want people to, I don't want to get a bad reputation and yeah. So I was very hesitant because I was really worried about, hurting people's feelings. And I regret that to this day. And when anyone ever talks to me about IEPs, or getting their child like a 504 services, I'm like, do it. Don't care about what the school said, because these are your kids and they may not come back next summer, so who cares? Like, you do what you need to do for your child. Always advocate. It's not being bothering, you're advocating. And it was funny because right before this meeting, I was just texting with someone who was saying, and she was like, I honestly thought her child was already on an IEP in 504, and she's having struggles with the teacher, and the teacher's constantly sending her messages, and she's like, I feel like a bad parent. Like, it's almost like she's shaming me. And, I've never had these problems with any before, and asking me what I could do. And I said, well, have you thought about like the IEP? Like, maybe it's time to have a meeting. I said, also connect with your child. Ask your child first. See what your child thinks about these times when there's challenges and that they're not connecting with their teacher, and ask them. It may be something small, you don't know. And then, try to connect from there, but then maybe call an IEP meeting, like a team meeting, and see what you guys can come up with. She's like, well, I don't have one. She's
Yeah.
like,
Okay,
ask the
pause.
principal.
So there's a couple of things I want to go over really quick because it's so important, because I'm listening to you, but I'm also thinking of the hundreds of parents
Yeah,
that I've
no.
talked to, right? So one of the things that I think is really important is this fear about advocating for your child.
Mhm.
The two top fears that I hear is I'm afraid of hurting the school, the staff, the teacher, the psychologist, the whoever, the principal's feelings. The other fear that I hear about is I'm afraid that if I advocate for my child, they're going to take it out on my child and treat my child like a behavioral problem rather than his or her diagnosis. And those are the top two fears, I think, with IEPs. But what I'm hearing from you is it's more to the benefit of your child to do the advocating, right? And to ask for the things and the services that your child needs, because it's not the school's life. It's not the staff's life. It's your child's life that you're talking about. And it's your child's, future and self-esteem that is going to be impacted in some way or another. So asking for an IEP meeting and advocating is really important.
I always say it's business, not personal. It's business. And I believe me, and like the people within my school know, because I was having so many troubles with my son, and with his IEP and his support within school, that I actually went to the school every day and sat next to him in class to make sure my son was getting the same opportunities as other students. And boy, was it uncomfortable for people. It was really uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable. So
Okay, pause one more time. I want to repeat what she said. I wanted to make sure that my son got the same opportunities as the other children. One big thing that is not being talked about, DE&I, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, is it's really in focus right now for a lot of people. And the one community that is not getting any focus is the neurodiverse community. And you hear it from a parent's mouth. I wanted to make sure that my son got the same opportunities as the other kids, because time and time again, our kids are getting pushed through classes, they're getting pushed through grades, they're getting pushed through school. A lot of times they are called out in front of the other kids. They are bullied by teachers and by peers. They're just not getting the same opportunities. And because neurodiverse individuals, the way we think is different, sometimes we have to learn differently, or there's different different tools that we may need that aren't being offered to us. And so here we have a parent that sat next to her child in class. And I'm not saying, please don't think that every parent has to do this, because it's impossible. Like, I can't do it. I'm a widow. I have 4 kids. It would be literally impossible. But if we come up with systems, if we come up with more things that are inclusive in the school systems, that is how we help the neuro minorities get an equal opportunity. Okay, go on.
And I want to say is I was a working parent. My husband and I, we both worked. And then when we found out my oldest was formally diagnosed, I quit my job because she needed a lot of support. And my husband picked up another job. So it was like he picked up two jobs, I lost my job. And because at that time we felt that's the best thing we could do for our family. And we made changes and sacrifices. So there's things that we had to do and give up. It's not, and I don't want people to think like, oh, we live the high life or something. No, my husband works really hard. He works two jobs in order for me to be here with the kids and give them that support. And I'm very fortunate. It's a struggle sometimes, but I'm fortunate that I have that. And because I realize that, I try my hardest to make sure that there's a difference for not just my child, because if my child has to do this uncomfortable stuff, but in a way we can make a change where someone else doesn't have to deal with that, that's amazing. Because I truly believe in, if you want to be the change, like be the change. Like I want to see the change. I will live it, because I know growing up, I wish I had that support. Like even if the little support that my child has now, if I had that back in the 80s, that would have been nice. So I want to see those things, a change. And I don't see enough people speaking out about it. Maybe we're just not loud enough, or, I know, because I know there's a lot of us out there, but particularly in my area, I feel that there's a stigma and parents don't openly talk about it. And it's a shame. I do. So I'm like the crazy lady from PTSA that does say stuff and bring up those points. And I think I wish more parents felt comfortable enough to do that, because then it wouldn't be such like maybe this like stigma or shame. I don't know what it is, but people are really, really private about it where my area where I'm at.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a moment. So you have three kiddos, and all three kiddos have diagnoses. How did you tell your kids that they had diagnoses?
I didn't, yes and no. For my oldest, I did not tell her until she was 17 years old. Because we first got her diagnosis of being dyslexic. So she pretty much gave up on life, because apparently her dyslexia affected her taking the trash out, doing any chores, putting clothes on. It affected her life that much. And we were still learning what it was. So we're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And we just told her that she learns differently, which is true. She does learn differently. She also had some phonological issues, just with sound pronunciation. And so she understood that she had to go and receive services because this. When my daughter became older, she got out of all of her support classes. She hardly uses any of her accommodations. And she's fully 100% in gen ed classes and makes straight A's on her own. I do not ask my kids to come home with a certain number. My goal is for them to do giving their 100%. Some days 100% may not look like 100%, and it's more like 75, because that's all you can give. But if that's all they can give every day, that's what I ask for them. And all my children come home with really good grades. The girls both make straight A's, which again, that's they choose to do that because they feel good about themselves making those grades. And that's great. But when we finally told our oldest that she was on the spectrum as well, it kind of clicked for her. And she's like, oh. And then I asked her, I was like, are you upset about this or whatever? And she's like, no. And I was like, we just treated you like we treated how you needed to be treated. And we did these things and supported you. Even if you didn't have anything, we'd still support you the same way. And so that was kind of interesting, because I didn't know if she would be like, I hate you, how dare you, it's part of my identity or whatever. But she didn't. And that's what that specifically this child needed. Now, however, on my youngest, we told him, because he was it was just like he knew that there's something very different about him to other children, even within his own family. So we just told him, this is how your brain works and functions a little differently, and you learn differently, and this is what it is, and you are autistic, and your body wants a lot of sensory a lot. And that helped him. And he is very vocal about being autistic, and he understands that. And he is the only student that I know of in his school that is open about being on the spectrum and then having ADHD. He actually does a little presentation every year when school starts at the beginning of the school year. And he shows a little video because he loves Mark Rober, who is a scientist and an engineer. And he also has a son who is on the spectrum. And he came out, I think, about 3 years ago and actually said this and was supporting about the community. And he did a video, kind of like a small simulation of what some people on the spectrum feel. And my son shows that to his class, and he has thrived with his peers. And it is amazing to me how his peers understand him better than staff does. And I think that contributes to him being open and honest to his peers. I've never, ever in my life seen, and I've been into a few in elementary schools because I volunteered with all of them, seen kids come up and ask my son, "Are you okay? Do you need a hug?" to like reset his senses. You know what I mean? Like, that is amazing. Or they see him kind of down, and they'll look at him and they'll point and they'll do like a thumbs up, seeing if he's okay. And I think that really shows a lot of like how he connected with his peers. And
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that, and this is, I'm also thinking a lot about parents and like things that I've heard about parents, right? And a lot of what I hear is, again, this fear of labels and this fear of letting people know about their children's diagnoses, whether it's talking to the school or talking to other parents or having their kids talk to their peers. And what I'm hearing is you have found within your family that educating peers and educating teachers and educating the community has really rallied around your son and been more inclusive because they were given that chance and that opportunity.
Correct.
Right? As soon as they fully understood, oh, this is what autism is, this is what autism is like, and what it can be experienced for some people, this is how I can support your son.
Correct. And
Yeah.
it's I think also too, because there's things that he does, and I love my son, and I though know that some of the stuff he can do can be super annoying. And I'm a neurodiverse person, and there's only so much I can take sometimes, and I'm like, whoa. So he even says, like, there's times that I am doing stuff, but I as an adult understand, like, there's things that he can't control. And there's times where he starts stimming. And a lot of times, though, the stimming is triggered from something else. And he explains that in his class. Like, if I'm doing something, I don't mean to be rude. I'm not trying to annoy you. It's like, my body needs this. And if it is bothering you, let me know. And I will go somewhere else, and I'll try to do the movement or whatever I need somewhere else. But like, I just need you to understand, like, I'm not doing this intentionally to upset you. And I think the kids appreciated that, and they do respect that.
Yeah, I think so. And this is one of the things that I talk to the school districts about, to other parents about, and also HR companies, is stimming is done by a neurodivergent individual. And a lot of people don't know what stimming is. So I'm going to brief over it really fast. Stimming is an action that is it's almost like a coping mechanism for a neurodivergent individual. Sometimes we notice that we're doing it, and sometimes we don't notice that we're doing it. Stimming can look like all different ways. It can be verbal, like making sounds out of your mouth or repeating a word over and over and over again. Or maybe it might be like rocking your body or tapping your foot or tapping your finger. It also might look like waving your hands. So, and a neurodivergent individual's body and mind, they are never doing it to annoy or attract attention. That's quite the opposite. It is something that that individual is doing because their body is just, their brain is sending signals that it needs to be done at that moment to help them regulate in some way or another. So I love the fact that what you said is that your son educates people, excuse me, on stimming, and also adds that he is excuse me, understanding and aware that it might interrupt other people and that he could do it somewhere else. Now, wish, that stimming is just acceptable anytime, anywhere, but we are also living in a neurotypical world, right? And so understanding from neurotypicals about neurodivergent individuals, but then also love and compassion from neurodivergent individuals towards the neurotypicals in the same room. Compassion on both sides, I think, is really important. And also, really, this is the other thing that I'm really hearing here: very open dialogue, right?
Yes.
And the neurotypicals coming to your son saying, hey, how can I support you?
Yes.
Beautiful.
That is amazing. And it's I get fearful though, because I'm like, is that going to be the same support when he goes to middle school? Like, I don't know, because those other kids that are being mushed in there, like, because it comes from different elementary schools, will be all transferred in together. Those kids didn't grow up with that education. And so that is a big fear that I have. It's an unknown. And I say this, like, again, too, because like my oldest and my youngest have very different, they're in the same household, but they had we did different routes on how we taught them and how they learned about these things and their IEP journeys and whatnot. Because I honestly don't believe that my daughter would have maybe had quite as a positive experience as my son does, because of the time. Even though it's a 6-year difference, because of the time, like even those few years, I don't think it would have been well accepted, as even I feel like now it's not being, addressed and accepted as openly. But especially back then, just those few years, maybe it wouldn't have been a good idea for her to address and say something like that. And so it's just very different time. So I'm hoping that just those few years between those kids and the success that Luke is having within his school, that maybe, in a few years' time, how much better it could be. And even if the school actually did more on their part to educate everyone, because again, these are just the kids in his grade and his particular class that get to do this, not everyone in the grade, just in his class. So as he has gone through the different classes and it mixes up, it's a little new kids that he's had previously. So things like that, I don't know, like how much of success that people could have if other people. And I have asked my son, because being a parent of someone who's on the spectrum, I'm not a doctor. However, I work closely with a lot of kids that are on, neurodiverse, and I can kind of spot it. I can also spot adults who maybe not realize that they're on it. And we see, even my son sees how they're treated differently. But we talk about this at home. It is not our place to say what other people are or aren't. If they want to share their diagnoses with people, let them do it and support them and give them respect, but it's not our place. However, we can see that these kids obviously have some diversity and challenges at school, but their peers don't understand it. And even these same peers that are accepting my son do not treat those kids the same. And they think they're weird and they're jerks. That's what the words from him. They think he's a jerk. They think he's weird. And it's really sad, because it's like, I tell as many people as I can, like, we're open about it. And my son has a very different peer experience than many other students in the school.
Yeah. So again, I just feel like more education around neurodiversity is what seems to be the key here, because when people are educated about neurodiversity, it's easier for them to be more inclusive,
Yeah.
because not knowing just to them, to a child, just looks weird or awkward. Not that it is, but without knowing, without understanding, that's where the disconnect seems to be.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the school. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is all of these things that you put into place in your school that were free for
Mhm.
schools to be able to do, and that parents maybe didn't know that they could do or ask for. And it really, one of the things that I hear time and time again is the parents will go to the school and they'll ask them for services for their child, or they'll ask for certain things to put in the IEP, or they won't even know what to ask for or what's available to them, right? So,
Yeah.
but you have come up with some very, very simple things to put into place, and they are free
Mhm.
to the school, because the school comes back time and time again and says, I'm sorry, we don't have the budget for that.
Correct.
So can you please tell me some of the things that you have done in your school that really made a huge impact and difference for your kiddo, as along with some other classmates and
Mhm.
schoolmates, that were free and easy to do?
Well, we actually asked for these things, and then then I was telling other parents, like, you should ask for this as well. And then it got to a point, also because I was in the school all the time with my child, um, I just kind of started doing it. And then it just started being implemented in the school. And I was like, why can't we just do this for everyone? It doesn't cost anything. However, though, because of COVID, it's made it harder because of staffing, because we need a person there for the kids. So that's been a little challenging, but hopefully things will start getting back to how it was. But for my particular child, we we've noticed, like, when he would have to go into the school, the entry to school was very, very overwhelming for him, because he would have to be with all these kids, and it's early in the morning, and it was just like kids were kind of wild and jumping all over the place, and it was loud. Our school actually goes into a cafeteria first, and they do like morning announcements all together, and then they disperse and go to their classroom. Being in the cafeteria is super overwhelming for him, especially having the entire school there. Not that the kids are being obnoxious or unruly, it's just normal chatter. And being in the cafeteria with just everybody was just a lot for him. And so we made it where he would enter the school differently from other people, and he walks through the front office, down the hall, and then he would meet in the resource room with a teacher, normally as a resource teacher. And we would wait in there, and they kind of start the day, just how you doing. And so we noticed there was other kids who were kind of having some of the same issues and just like being overwhelmed. So we just kind of made it a breakfast club, so the kids can go in there while they're doing their morning announcements, and we kind of give them a little, like, what their morning announcements, like, hey, there's going to be a book fair this week, kind of thing. And then ask the kids how their day are, like, where are you at today, like, on just tell us where your head's going.
Go ahead. Can you keep going?
No, it's fine. And just how where you're at, and just checking in with them. They have a little snack. Then while all the students are dispersing into their classrooms, those kids get to stay there. And when everyone's in their class, they walk on their own to their classroom with the halls being empty and calm, and kind of like ready to start the day. And then my son also has issues being in the cafeteria and being around a lot of different smells. He has food aversion, and he has a very heightened sense of smell, like nobody's business. I can open a jar of salsa and he can smell it from upstairs, and he's like, I smell salsa. So he has a very heightened sense of smell. So being in the cafeteria is so overwhelming for him, that it actually makes him sick. Like, he gets sick from it. So we made it where he can go and have lunch somewhere else. And so I would come at lunch, and I would have lunch buddies, and I would have a group of kids come and sitting in the pod with me that needed a quieter place to be. I know our school has an allergy table, but the allergy table still in the cafeteria. So we actually made a completely different location that isn't too far and it doesn't disrupt anybody. It's kind of just the other classrooms are all empty and we just sit in the little area. Our school is lucky that we have a smart board. I don't know if people know what those are. It's like a chalkboard, but it's actually a computer. And we would watch videos of people reading books. Maybe if there's a certain topic that we're working on in school, maybe we'd read about that, dinosaurs or whatever, and that would be a topic we would have. And then also, if the kids were really well behaved and did everything they were supposed to do, naturally, the kids normally were. On Fridays, I would allow them to bring a buddy. And so we started making it where they could bring buddies in. So it was a way for them to still be connected with their peers. And it was like a little treat for them to have a friend come. And we did that. Also, I request things like in my IEP to have a buddy that he knows and each class coming up. And it would be one friend that he has a really strong connection with that in the coming school year that he knows that I have at least one solid friend that I know and I am safe and I feel comfortable in my classroom. So that is something that I always put in our IEP so that he has that connection and feels comfortable and safe. However, because of him educating his class, he actually had multiple people to choose from. So I always felt like we had a pretty good, like we always had good chances of having people that were really supportive and a good friend for him within the class.
I love that. Thank you so much for, I mean, these are things that I don't know that parents have even thought about, right? Or that knew that they could ask for, but it's so true. I mean, I'm neurodivergent myself and I can smell. I've had people that I'm standing 10 feet away and their cologne or perfume makes me sick to my stomach.
Yes.
So I know exactly what you're talking about, and smelling other people's food. Oh my gosh, smelling cigarettes. If somebody is a smoker, I swear it could be like 100 people in a room and I could figure out, I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody smokes.
Yes, exactly.
But it's so true, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that's free and simple that we could put, you could see a kid in the background. I am a widow, y'all.
I know it's fine.
But it's something free and simple that we could do for our kids that could really make a huge difference. And I love that.
And then there's also like our school, we're lucky where we do have a peace corner. But depending on how your IEP set up or what have you, like maybe your school doesn't have a peace corner, I made or like a resource room, like a sensory room. So we do have a sensory room, but you have to have an adult with you. So depending on where your child is and their needs and whatnot on an IEP, because my child needs movement breaks. My child needs movement breaks. So he constantly, and that actually settles him down. So if he goes and like runs really quick, some laps around outside, he can come in and it helps him sit and be still for class. So, but like, I know they have a sensory room, but he can't necessarily go down there if there's no one to do that. But he can go out, say like a different grade level is having a recess. He can go out to that recess and run around real quick and then come back to class. However, we do have expectations because I'm sure there's times, and there has been times where he's like, I'm going to be out here a little longer than what I should be, because there's got to be give and take. So he has to understand like this is a great resource for him, but you can't abuse it. And that's something that as a parent that I have to respect that the school is giving that and he's not abusing those things, because that can happen. Because even though I'm asking a lot of the school to do these things, as a parent and my child, we need to hold up our part of the bargain as well and, meet them as well.
Do you think, because we're coming to a close on our time, can you think of maybe like 5 things that parents can ask for, or that would be a good thing to support for their child in the schools?
God, there's loads. It's so hard because it's like what your kid would need. Because like my oldest accommodations and my youngest accommodations are completely different. But I'm gonna say for elementary school, okay, I'll try to do for elementary, middle school, and high school. Elementary
Okay.
school, have input on the teacher. And I know not everyone can be in the school. Make time, try. I mean, like no matter what your situation is, I am sure there's a way within the school year that you can spend 2 days in the school. 2 days. Meet the teachers. Like me working the school, I know how the teachers' vibes are. And that's not me just being there every day. It's like just volunteering to do art class or whatever, or like a class party or something, or your school, like those little things, spending that little much time, it helps your school. Your kid loves it. Okay. And other kids love it and appreciate it. They may not tell you, but when I walk down the hall and kids are giving me high fives and saying, "Oh, you're so and so's mom," it feels good. They love it. So please, please, if you can do that, I suggest doing that, because you get to really see how your schools ran and the little things about it. And you also get to see teachers and staff, how they interact with each other. So have input on your child's teacher, and granted, keep in mind that it changes during the summer. So maybe that teacher isn't coming back. So have a plan B of who you think you would like your kid to have. Okay. Another thing is like ask to have that information. But if a school does give you the information of who your teacher is, be respectful and don't share that with other people, because they don't know who their teacher is going to be, and it can cause conflict, and it just makes it harder for the kids that do have that accommodation, that maybe the school won't be so willing to give you, who your teacher is the upcoming year. That helps my son know, and he's not so nervous. We also asked to go and meet the teacher before the open house meet and greet. And this is elementary level, where he can go in and meet his teacher. Sometimes he helps his teacher set up for their class, and all the teachers in the grade, like set up for the new school year, things like that, because that actually really helps create connections, and it lets the teachers see your child being helpful and a positive light, not just when they're like stimming and maybe doing something that they feel is challenging. And it also gives your student a chance to see the teachers as not just authoritarians. I also suggest the school kind of pushes you about how many accommodations you have on a list. I say throw everything at it, see what sticks, you can take it out later. That is something like, if your child needs bathroom breaks, if your child needs movement, your child can have gum, as long as it's respectful. Like there's so many things, like people are like, "Oh, your child can chew gum." I'm like, "Yeah, I asked for it. It's my IEP. He may not always chew gum, but he has that available. 2 days that he needs it, he has it." I think, gosh, there's so many different things. As for middle school and high school, ask for extra time for test taking, for notes. Please, if your child has struggles taking notes, ask that the teachers give your child the notes, copies of the notes. If your child needs to just sit there and listen, if your child can kind of scribe as much as they can, and then they get the notes later, have them do that, because that is a really big, helpful tool. And like my oldest, she had a lot of accommodations, but she didn't always need them, and she wouldn't always call on them. But there were some times where she was struggling, and she's like, "You know what, I'm gonna have to say I need these accommodations," and she did. And that was her choice. She could have used the accommodations every time, but she chose not to. And she did have those resources when she fell back one. And I don't want people to have a stigma of like, "Oh, well, if I have my kid needing this, then that means they're not intelligent and they're not good at these things." That's not true. You're just giving them the tools to be able to have the best abilities that they have. Give them those tools. Like it's nothing shameful about it. Like, look, my daughter had it. She's on straight A's. She's able to do these things. She didn't necessarily always need them, but they were there for her, and it did help her compete in a neurotypical, day-to-day school that is built for other people that don't think and like her. I'm trying to think what's some other ones because there's just so many little things. Having a class buddy for elementary school is a really good one. Oh goodness. I'm just trying to think. I was like, what else do we have in our IEP? We have movement breaks built in. We have actually a special little like IKEA chair, those little IKEA chairs that actually have a pull down like shade.
Huh.
Yeah, like a little IKEA pod that is outside of there's one inside the classroom for my child. He does not need that anymore. He kind of like, he has a really good relationship with his teacher. I'm going to say building a connection with the teacher and your student has a connection has made such a difference in his education. So he doesn't need that accommodation. It's there, it's moved out into the pod. I think also having just like, if your student needs a safe, like just to have a break and being out of the classroom, we also do like signs with our teacher because my child does not like to have attention drawn on him. So just because he's not giving eye contact does not mean he's not listening. So if he needs to have a movement break or something, he has sticky notes on his desk and he just moves a colored sticky note to the other side and he gets up and he leaves the class and the teacher knows where he's going based on the sticky note, that the color that he moved. We have accommodations like that set up for him and that works for him. My oldest daughter would pull her ear when the teacher's kind of giving eye contact. She'd pull her ear and that means she was going to leave the class for something because she as well didn't want to have that attention. So there's just different things that you can kind of think outside of the box that you think would work with your child. Also, ask your kid. Your kid knows, they're there day to day. And sometimes it works now and it doesn't work later. Sometimes it doesn't work now and it does work later. There's just different tools and strategies that you have to throw at it and see what fits. Like what
Oh my gosh.
works. Because
I feel like there's so many juicy nuggets in this. I feel like people need to watch this again and like multiple times and take notes. Thank you
Yeah, no. And
so much.
I want to say that I think what you're doing is amazing. And you truly, when you were talking about the IEP, and I've already mentioned this to you, when you were talking about the IEP, like you were being 100% honest. And that I felt that because I was there. And when I listened to those words, I was like, oh my gosh, like you're saying my story. And I feel like more people have that and they're just afraid. And I try my best and I see you're doing the same thing. And I appreciate that you're reaching out and you're trying to get to this community and these parents that are afraid. And I just want to say, like, I wish I could go back and fight for my daughter like I did for my son. Now, my daughter turned out great. Things are great for her, but there was a lot of unnecessary like worry and stress that we could have avoided if we would have known and we would have gone in educated. So no matter what relationship you have with your school and you have these warm and fuzzy feelings and you think they're doing everything for your child, they're not. They're not. They're holding out. They are holding out. So you have to push and be uncomfortable and make them feel uncomfortable. And you have to feel uncomfortable because you're doing this for your child. And I'll never forget that first meeting when we left and my husband turned to me and he says, it's like an insurance company. They don't want to pay out full price. He's like, you have to think of it like that. They want to do as least amount as possible. So they're going to offer you something and it's not the best offer every time. He's like, so if you think there's more that you need, push, ask, because the worst thing is going to be is no. Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like you're there for your child. And so don't go in worried about hurting people's feelings. Advocate for your child because it's your child's education. You know, these people already out of education. So you know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid. Don't ever be afraid to ask for something or question, and always trust your gut. There's so many times that I trusted my gut, but someone made me doubt myself. And I regret that. And I shouldn't have doubted myself. I should have just kept pushing. So now I'm like, no, I think this is how it is. And it turns out that I'm right. I am right. So please don't be ashamed or afraid. Like, speak out, advocate for your child. And it does. And not only are you helping your child, you're helping the next person in line, that
Yeah.
they don't have to go through these same, this same emotional roller coaster. Like, you're going to make it better for the next person as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming on today.
no
And
problem.
I don't know, who knows, maybe I could talk you into coming back again
Oh,
sometime.
no. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional. I'm just a mom who's been doing this for a long time with different schools. And this is just my experience that I've had. And I will say that even the challenges that I've had with my school, and I've made them feel very uncomfortable many times, they have been nice to me, and they just know that I will go to bat, and they know that I'm serious about that. And it's helped my student, and it's helped other students. And I look forward to seeing what like what you're doing, like that taking off and becoming like a normal thing. And so I just hope that other people can take this and do something positive with that, and find courage and confidence, because I know it's really hard, especially raising kids with that neurodiverse. It's different. It's very different, and there's a lot of parents who don't understand what you go through day to day. And it's
Yeah, that's so true. I think that's such a really big thing is the experience of a parent that is raising neurodivergent children, or a neurodivergent parent raising neurodivergent children. It is a very different experience, and there are a lot of unseen challenges and obstacles that we face that other people just don't know about, and quite often are very judged, right?
Yeah.
So I think, to summarize and finish here, is get help and support.
Mhm.
As a parent, get help and support. Don't be afraid to reach out to me and put yourself on my schedule.
Yes.
It doesn't cost you anything to have a consult with me.
Ask what,
So
speaking to other parents that have done this, and like especially people like for instance like you have a lot of knowledge. Like, tap into those resources, go in prepared. Please go in prepared. Like, have notes. Like, I started having notes and bullet points of what I want to talk on. Bring copies of your IEP, previous ones, and go over like a fine-tooth comb. I ask for a digital copy, and I always ask for a hard copy. So I have both of them, because if I'm on the road and someone tells me, oh, so and so, I can pull up my digital copy of my IEP and look back. So like, use these resources and go in knowing more, I would suggest. And don't be afraid to talk to other parents and what they have and experience and things like that. Reach out to others.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Go ahead and stay on for a moment. You all,
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here, for listening. Again, if you want to be put on my schedule, reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, or just comment in the YouTube thread and I will send you my calendar. In fact, I'm going to put my calendar link in the comments. So just feel free to go on there and put yourself in. Again, it doesn't cost anything to have an appointment with me, and why not give yourself support, right? Especially if there's something that you're thinking about or something that you're working through that you really want support with. The other thing is, if you have a subject that you want me to talk about or tackle, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know what you want to talk about. Whether you're a working individual who's neurodivergent, or you're a parent of a neurodivergent child, or you're a corporation or a company that wants to be more inclusive and learn more about that. You all, thank you so much for being here and for watching. Again, like, subscribe, share, comment. Talk to you later.